ultimately, I believe the delivery is as important, if not more important, than the analysis and the insights that you conduct. If you can come up with these great insights and great findings, but if you don't know how to deliver that to a coach or you don't know how to deliver that to a group of players, there's no point in doing the analysis then. So this is probably something that I'm really interested in and the kind of, how you can structure it. So this is just kind of some practical findings, some anecdotes that I've seen over the years. So please feel free to jump in with things that you guys have experienced or maybe seen in your different setups as well as we kind of go through this. Um, Simon's probably familiar with this five W's and a H. I believe the five W's and a H approach is used by journalists within like the first paragraph of whatever story that they're looking to tell. Is you want to hit these five things. You want to hit the who, the what, the why, the when, and the where. It basically sets the scene so that you kind of know what you're looking at and know what you're talking about. Um, and I think this can be used as analysts as well, albeit maybe in a slightly different way. So when we're looking at it from an analysis point of view, I look at those five W's and I'll get to the H in a minute and look at reordering it slightly. So the first thing I'd probably look at is the why, then you look at the who, the what, the when, the where, and then finally the H, the how. So the how are you going to deliver the information or what are you going to deliver it on? There's this great book by Simon Sinek called Start with Why. So it's a really interesting read, and I'd recommend it to anyone. But it essentially we're going to talk about the big why and what we think is important, or why we think starting with why is important. I've been in a number of teams, and there's always a team schedule. There's always a weekly schedule put out, and it's like, okay, team meeting is first thing on a Monday morning, or team meeting is just before pitch, and team meeting, in the afternoon at whatever, 2 o'clock. And a lot of the time, that team meeting can be in the schedule because it's in the schedule. You know, it just has become a place there, and that's probably the wrong reason to have a meeting. I think that there needs to be a really clear goal or outcome from the meeting, and always ask yourself, is this meeting really necessary? Why are we having it? Um, and if you can answer yourself that, you might say, actually, I don't need the meeting, or yeah, I know exactly what I'm going to get out of it. So it just puts a lot more structure to what you're going to get, but also gives great clarity for the players or the coaches, whoever is going to that meeting as well. The next thing then is probably the who, okay? And to talk about the who, I'm going to use a zoo analogy. I'm not going to put photos of all of our players up from the senior men's team, but maybe you can come to some conclusions on who might be a giraffe and who might be an elephant out of the lot here. But it's just an analogy. So when you've kind of explored why you're having your meeting, what the reason is. The next thing is who needs to be in it. Who needs to go to certain meetings? Does everyone need to be in one meeting? Do you only need some players in another meeting? And you might need to just tell the leaders something. You might need to tell just the kickers something. That's a rugby specific one maybe, but I'm sure it can be seen in football between positional groups like defenders, strikers. You might have different player groups that, might need to be in some meetings. And like sometimes it is important to get the whole team together. But again, to kind of keep it within this analogy of the zoo, I think that, you need to have a really well-trained zookeeper, to be able to feed all of the animals at once. So the person or the coach or the analyst who's running that meeting needs to be on the ball and able to cater to, that player who has 100 appearances for the team versus the player who's 21 and has three appearances within the same kind of group. So understanding who needs to be there is probably very, very important. This is just kind of a little schematic just to kind of show you maybe a typical match week within the the setup in rugby. So you'd have your assembly at the start of the week, and this is where you might have all your individuals coming in, and you might just check in. What do you need this week? You start catering to, okay, you need some video footage on that. Okay, this player really likes a graphic drawn out of their kick maps or whatever. So you can kind of start to poke into individuals and see what they need at the start of the week. As you get into the week, then you might get, little positional groups forming. So you might get the halfbacks together to talk about what plays they're going to play off their scrum. You might get the forwards together to talk about the line out calls. So you might just start putting them into little positional groups. Maybe the front rows get together, the back rows, and talk about what position specific stuff that they need to talk about. Um, and again, I find in these kind of smaller groups, it gives a little bit more space or scope for players who maybe aren't that comfortable in a group of 40 players to maybe put their hand up and be like, yeah, this is what I think, or this is what I'm going to say. Especially if they're young or they're new and they've got someone who's way more senior than them, sitting there that they've probably watched on TV for the last 10 years. It can be an intimidating place to be. So if you have these kind of smaller positional groups, you might actually, as an analyst or a coach, you hear that person or player talk and get a sense of where their head is at and gives you a chance to check in. Do they know what the aim is as well? As you kind of move through the week, then you might come more into units. So all the forwards might start to have more meetings together. The backs might start to do more together as a whole. And then ultimately, as you're getting towards game day, you can see that funnel's narrowing. So that narrowing is probably you're condensing your information, you're getting everyone on the same page, concise delivery of messaging, and it's becoming more and more player led. And ultimately, we want them all to be putting on the green jersey on match day, all on the same page and knowing exactly, what the plan is for the next 80 minutes on the pitch. The next thing then after that is your what, and so a clear agenda is so important. Having key outcomes for your meeting, what you want to get out of it. And it's really important for you because it means you can structure your meeting and you know exactly what it is that you want to get out. But it's also really good for confirmation of learning because you then have something to fall back on and say, okay, they've taken away from that what I wanted them to take away, or oh no, they didn't. That was way off the mark for whatever reason it might be. So I kind of try to liken this to a flight plan. Once a plane takes off from London and it's heading over to Los Angeles there, that has a number of waypoints it has to hit it at different times set out for them. Because once they're up in the sky, they don't have air traffic control to talk to. They need to know exactly what their route is going to be, what the plan is, what points they're going to hit along the way, so that they can then get to a safe landing on the other side at the end of their meeting, essentially. This is just an idea of when, and this is a book here that you can read way more up on. I'm no expert in this at all, but it's by Daniel H. Pink. It's called "When: The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing," and I'll just leave you to read some of the pieces up on the screen there. But it's basically saying, that there is optimum times of the day for individuals to take in information when people are at their most productive, when they can, it might be first thing in the morning for some people. Some people might be better in the afternoon or evening, and it does vary from place to place or person to person. But I'd say, if there's a meeting set, you've got dinner at 7 p.m. in the team hotel, and then there's a meeting at 8 p.m. I can probably guarantee you that, most of the players are going to be fairly switched off by the time you get to that 8 p.m. meeting and heading into a food coma. So kind of planning when your meetings are. And again, this, we kind of alluded to it before when you're like, why are we having this meeting? Is it just in the schedule to, take up space? It's important that you can plan out and map when you're going to deliver this information within a day. Maybe before a session, maybe it's after a session. But also, I guess, in the context of the whole season as well, there might be some things that you deliver to a team if things are going really well in the season. You might be able to deliver some messages to them. However, if you're going through a tough spot and you're two losses on the bounce, you might be t not might not be the time to deliver a certain bit of information to them. So again, that's just something that you can kind of, feel yourself and just try and be aware of, and not just sticking things in for the sake of sticking them in. So just try and have a plan of when the meeting should happen. The next thing is where. So where exactly do the meetings happen? And this is a big one that we try to implement within the IRFU, is having different locations for each meeting. There's no two consecutive meetings in the same place. So we use a mix of outdoors, indoors, and then hybrid meetings, where they go in between the two. Um, and it can be challenging, and you're somewhat constrained depending on what your facilities are. But we find that if you can change that stimulus, it's less likely that a player is going to switch off for 15 minutes because they're in a different environment. They're not just sitting into the same chair and the same like four walls looking at them as they have their meeting. And if we can, we try to problem solve on the go as well. And you can see there the big TV screen that we get in for training sessions with the men's senior team. So if there's anything that they can review pitch side, they go and do their drill, they go and have their play, then they come back in, coach talks them through the clip that we'll have lined up based on what the coach has told us to get, watch it, then straight back out onto the pitch. So again, that's, probably a really positive example, and not everywhere might be able to do that. But, simply switching up the where of a meeting could be something that is a really small or simple fix, but could have, good bang for your buck from. And I've even seen in the middle of meetings, coaches just say, okay, everyone stand up and switch places, small little things like that, just to keep people stimulated, and interest going as well is important. Then finally, we get to the how. And how you deliver the information can depend obviously on the group that you're dealing with, their level of, what we call is their analysis age or analysis IQ. Are they, ready for this type of analysis or not? But some things that we kind of look at is this flipped classroom approach. And I found this actually quite beneficial. I did it quite a bit in the last season. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it essentially looks at, if we have a meeting tomorrow morning and we have three clips that we want to show, we send the clips out to the players the night before. So it means that they have time to look at the clips, form their own opinion, and they're coming to the meeting ready to interact with you, as opposed to seeing the clip for the first time. Because I guarantee you, the first time a player sees a clip, it's like, where am I? What am I doing? Next time they see it, oh, what am I doing wrong? Next one is, if I'm not doing something wrong, who is doing something wrong? So if you can kind of get all of that out of the way first, you can have much more kind of productive meetings and conversations with players, so that they're kind of ready to basically add value. A really hard one for coaches and analysts to stick to is we try to keep it to 5 clips max. It's a tough one. It's probably easier to stand up in front of a group for an hour and talk as it is to stand up for 15 minutes and get your point across.